An FBI operation ended in dozens arrested, including police officers, sheriff's deputies, and 2 sheriffs in the Mississippi Delta.
Authorities have just unsealed indictments against a Minnesota state official accused of cartel conspiracy.
Tonight, federal agents storm Minneapolis in a $1 billion cartel takedown.
At 3:47 a.m. on a frozen January morning, the heart of Minneapolis went dark. Not from a power outage, from a federal blackout order. More than 400 agents from the FBI's Organized Crime Division, ICE's Homeland Security Investigations Unit, the DEA's Narcotics Task Force, and elite SWAT teams moved through the snow-covered streets like ghosts. Armored black SUVs formed tight convoys. Tactical helicopters hovered low over the Cedar Riverside neighborhood. Infrared scopes swept across apartment complexes and shuttered storefronts. Their target wasn't just a cartel safe house. It wasn't a drug lab or a smuggling tunnel. It was an entire shadow government. But because what federal investigators were about to uncover inside the heart of Minnesota's Somali community would expose the largest political infiltration operation in United States history. A $19 billion criminal empire built on fake refugee programs, counterfeit documents, human trafficking networks, and a drug pipeline that moved methamphetamine, heroin, and fentanyl pills from the Mexican border to the Canadian crossing without a single red flag. And at the center of it all was a man who swore an oath to protect this state, Senator Marcus Khaled, a rising political star, a champion of immigrant rights, a beloved voice for marginalized communities, and, according to encrypted files now in federal custody, the shadow commander of the largest cartel infiltration operation ever discovered on American soil. And this story begins exactly 72 hours earlier. Inside a secure operations room at the FBI's Minneapolis field office, Senior Special Agent Elena Cortez stared at a screen that didn't make sense. The numbers were impossible. Over the past 8 years, a network of nonprofit organizations, refugee assistance programs, and community support foundations had processed $19 billion in federal funding. Money from the Department of Health and Human Services, money from the Office of Refugee Resettlement, money from housing assistance grants and employment training programs, money designed to rebuild lives shattered by war and poverty. But the money never reached the people it was meant to help. Instead, it disappeared into a web of shell companies, offshore accounts, and encrypted wire transfers that stretched across 14 countries. And when forensic accountants followed the digital trail, they found something that made the entire room go silent. Drug cartel logistics. Purchase orders for methamphetamine precursors routed through fake chemical supply firms in Minneapolis. Wire transfers to known Sinaloa cartel operatives in Tijuana and Ciudad Juarez. Payments to human trafficking syndicates in East Africa, and coordination records for migrant smuggling convoys that moved thousands of people across the southern border and straight into Minnesota. People who were never registered, never tracked, and never seen again. This wasn't fraud. This was infrastructure. This was a cartel occupation disguised as humanitarian work. At 4:32 a.m., the hammer dropped. Team Alpha breached a 3-story building on Franklin Avenue that claimed to be a refugee relocation center. The front door exploded inward under a tactical ram. Flashbangs detonated in rapid succession. Agents in black tactical gear poured through the entrance, rifles raised, voices shouting commands in English and Somali. Inside, they found no beds, no intake desks, no families waiting for help. They found server farms, rows of industrial-grade computers humming in climate-controlled rooms, encrypted hard drives stacked like bricks, and filing cabinets filled with counterfeit passports, fraudulent asylum applications, and falsified employment records for over 12,000 people who didn't exist. Team Bravo hit a compound in South Minneapolis that operated as a community health clinic. The doors were locked, but the lights were off, but thermal imaging showed heat signatures inside. Agents stormed the building and found something worse: a drug processing facility, stainless steel tables covered in fentanyl powder, industrial pill presses stamping out thousands of counterfeit Percocet tablets per hour, vacuum-sealed bags of methamphetamine stacked floor to ceiling, and in a back office, ledgers detailing shipments to Chicago, Detroit, and Milwaukee, hundreds of kilograms per month, moving through delivery trucks with fake nonprofit logos painted on the sides. Team Charlie descended on a luxury estate in Adena, a gated mansion owned by a holding company registered in the Cayman Islands. The occupant was listed as a philanthropic consultant, but when agents breached the front gate, they found duffel bags stuffed with cash. No, over $3 million in 20s, 50s, and hundreds. Encrypted phones still warm from recent use, and a steel safe containing documents that linked every transfer, every fake program, every fraudulent grant directly to one man, Senator Marcus Khaled. But the worst discovery came from the basement: a communications hub, satellite uplinks, encrypted radio transceivers, and a digital map showing real-time locations of federal patrol routes, ICE checkpoints, and border surveillance grids. Someone inside law enforcement was feeding intelligence directly to the cartel. Someone with access to classified systems. Someone who knew exactly when and where federal agents would be looking. And that someone was being paid from the same accounts that funded Senator Khaled's political campaigns. 48 hours later, inside a cyber forensics lab at FBI headquarters in Washington, analysts cracked the encryption on the seized servers. What they found was a master plan, codename Operation Nightfall. It wasn't just a fraud scheme. It wasn't just drug trafficking or human smuggling. It was a systematic takeover of Minnesota's political and social infrastructure, designed to turn the state into a permanent cartel stronghold. The operation had 7 layers. Layer 1, fake refugee programs. Organizations that claimed to resettle families fleeing violence in Somalia, Sudan, and Eritrea. In reality, they processed cartel members, drug couriers, and human traffickers using falsified documents. Over 8,000 people were brought into the country under false identities. Most disappeared into cartel networks. Some were forced into labor. Others became drug mules or enforcers. Layer 2, money laundering through nonprofits. Senator Khaled directed federal grants to organizations he controlled. The money flowed through fake charities, sham foundations, and ghost corporations. It funded luxury real estate purchases, private jets, encrypted communications networks, and payoffs to corrupt officials. Over $12 billion vanished into offshore accounts in Dubai, Nairobi, and the British Virgin Islands. Layer 3, drug pipeline coordination. The Sinaloa cartel supplied methamphetamine, heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl pills from Mexico. The drugs were smuggled across the southern border, transported north through shell trucking companies, and distributed in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and surrounding cities. The network moved over 2 tons of narcotics per week, but federal surveillance never detected it because patrol routes were leaked in advance. Layer 4, human trafficking corridors. Women and children from East Africa were promised safety and asylum. Instead, they were sold into forced labor and sex trafficking operations. The network moved over 1,500 victims per year. Many were never found. Layer 5, law enforcement infiltration. Corrupt border agents, ICE officers, and city police were paid to ignore smuggling routes and falsify reports. Over 60 law enforcement personnel were on cartel payroll. They received encrypted instructions from handlers who reported directly to Senator Khaled's inner circle. Layer 6, political cover. Senator Khaled used his position to block federal oversight, delay investigations, and frame critics as racists targeting immigrant communities. He pushed legislation to expand refugee programs, increase funding, and reduce background checks. Every policy he championed created new openings for cartel expansion. Layer 7, the endgame. Senator Khaled planned to run for governor. With cartel money funding his campaign, corrupt officials in every level of state government, and a network of loyalists in law enforcement, he intended to turn Minnesota into a sanctuary state for cartel operations. No federal raids, no deportations, no investigations, a permanent safe zone for one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. This wasn't corruption. This was command-level collusion. This was treason engineered from the inside, and it was about to be destroyed. At 5:18 a.m., inside a federal command center at Joint Base Andrews, a digital war map lit up with over 200 red markers across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Iowa. Every marker was a cartel asset. Every marker was a target. The operation had a name: Sentinel Purge. Over 1,000 federal agents, 50 SWAT teams, Black Hawk helicopters from the National Guard, armored units from DHS, and air support from the U.S. Air Force, F-15 fighter jets patrolling the Canadian border to prevent cartel members from fleeing north. The raids began at dawn. In Minneapolis, agents stormed a warehouse district where cartel-controlled logistics firms operated. They seized 42 delivery trucks, found hidden compartments filled with methamphetamine and fentanyl pills, and arrested 16 drivers who were moving drugs under the cover of food distribution services. In St. Paul, auto SWAT teams hit a luxury apartment complex used as a human trafficking transit point. They rescued 11 women and children held in locked rooms. They arrested 7 traffickers, and they recovered ledgers showing payments from Senator Khaled's shell companies. In Rochester, federal agents raided a chemical supply firm that sold methamphetamine precursors to cartel labs. They found invoices for purchases totaling $8 million. The company owner was arrested, trying to flee in a private plane. In Duluth, ICE teams breached a migrant smuggling hub near the Canadian border. They found falsified travel documents, encrypted communication devices, and records showing over 3,000 illegal crossings coordinated by cartel operatives. And in Adena, at Senator Khaled's private estate, Mobby FBI agents executed a no-knock warrant at 6:04 a.m. The senator was still asleep when tactical teams breached his front door. He stood in his marble foyer in a silk robe, surrounded by agents in full tactical gear, and said nothing. His home told the story for him. Luxury furnishings, designer clothing still tagged, a wine cellar stocked with bottles worth thousands. In the garage, 3 vehicles with a combined value of $600,000. In the safe, $4 million in cash, vacuum-sealed and labeled by date. And in a hidden office behind a false wall, agents found the smoking gun. Encrypted communication logs showing direct coordination with Sinaloa cartel commanders. Detailed financial records linking federal grants to drug shipments. And a master file titled Minnesota Forever, outlining the final phase of Operation Nightfall, the complete takeover of the state government. Senator Marcus Khaled was arrested on 78 federal counts, including racketeering, money laundering, drug trafficking conspiracy, human trafficking, wire fraud, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. If convicted on all counts, he faces over 300 years in federal prison. But the arrests didn't stop with the senator. Over the next 72 hours, federal investigators dismantled the entire network. They arrested 84 cartel operatives, including enforcers, drug couriers, and trafficking coordinators. They seized over 6 tons of methamphetamine, 100 kilograms of heroin, 300,000 fentanyl pills, and 47 kilograms of pure cocaine. They recovered $19 million in cash, frozen over $300 million in offshore accounts, and confiscated luxury real estate worth $60 million. But the most damaging discovery came from the seized servers. Internal emails, patrol schedules, raid warnings, border surveillance gaps, all leaked by corrupt law enforcement officers who were paid to protect cartel operations. 63 law enforcement personnel were arrested, Border Patrol agents who allowed smuggling convoys to pass, ICE officers who falsified detention records, city police who ignored drug trafficking complaints, deputy sheriffs who tipped off cartel members before raids, and 3 senior officials inside the Minnesota Department of Public Safety who coordinated the leaks. And 1 FBI agent who had worked undercover inside the network for 18 months said this during his debriefing. This wasn't just corruption. This was a parallel police force. The cartel had their own command structure, their own intelligence network, their own enforcement teams, and they were operating with the full protection of people we were supposed to trust. The badge will be rebuilt, but the scars will take years to heal. But the investigation revealed something even worse. Senator Khaled's network wasn't isolated to Minnesota. Forensic accountants traced the money flows across 14 states, trucking routes through Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin, shell companies in Michigan and Ohio, distribution hubs in Chicago, Detroit, and Milwaukee, human trafficking corridors stretching from Texas to the Canadian border. The Sinaloa cartel had built a continental pipeline, and Senator Khaled was the architect. Federal analysts discovered that the network could move over 15 tons of narcotics per month without triggering a single alert. Shipping manifests were altered. Way stations were shut down for maintenance when convoys passed. Border crossings were timed to avoid surveillance windows, and migrant smuggling operations provided perfect cover. Thousands of people moving north with no documentation, no tracking, and no questions asked. The final file recovered from Senator Khaled's hidden office was titled Phase 3 Federal Expansion. It outlined a plan to replicate the Minnesota operation in 5 other states. Fake refugee programs, corrupt officials, cartel-controlled logistics networks. All funded by federal grants and protected by political cover. The goal was simple: turn the northern tier of the United States into a permanent cartel sanctuary. If federal agents had arrived 6 months later, Phase 3 would have been operational. This story is not just about fraud. It's not just about drugs or human trafficking or corrupt politicians. It's about what happens when power no longer needs violence to survive, when it only needs silence. when it only needs ambition. Senator Marcus Khaled didn't force people to comply. He convinced them. He gave them money. He gave them influence. He gave them a cause. And in return, they gave him everything. $19 billion. Thousands of lives destroyed. Communities torn apart by addiction. Families shattered by trafficking. And a system so broken that one man could turn an entire state into a cartel fortress without a single federal alarm. The cost is still being counted. In the past 8 years, over 1,200 people in Minnesota died from fentanyl overdoses. Most of those pills came from Senator Khaled's network. Hundreds of women and children were trafficked. Most were never recovered. And thousands of refugees who came to America seeking safety were exploited, enslaved, or disappeared. This is the real cost of corruption. Not just stolen money, stolen lives. If you believe every federal program should face independent audits with real consequences for fraud, comment audit below. If you believe political infiltration by cartels is a threat to national security, comment expose. And if you're still watching, tap like so more people see this story. Because this isn't just a Minnesota problem. This is a system problem, and it's happening in your state too. Stay here, because this investigation isn't finished. Federal prosecutors believe there are more arrests coming, more networks operating in the shadows, and more politicians who sold their power to the highest bidder. Hit subscribe so you're here when the next raid happens. This is the infiltration case that proves corruption doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be patient. Stay vigilant, because the next senator promising to help your community might already be building the empire that will destroy it.